Alrighty, everyone. Welcome to the first show of This is Constitutional with Bruce Jacobs. My name is Bruce Jacobs. I'm an attorney here in Miami. I've been practicing law 25 years, used to be a prosecutor, and now I represent people in foreclosures. Primarily, I fight banks, and most of our fight is about fraudulent foreclosures. I am the chairman of the foreclosure committee for the Miami-Dade Bar Association, and I was given the opportunity to come on, start doing this show, and I'm looking forward to it. We're going to be talking about just things that I think matter in today's world. We're seeing a very, very strange phenomenon in our government, and not just in our government, in the whole world. And there's a lot of people fighting for freedom, a lot of people fighting for the Constitution, and that's something that has always been near and dear to me in the years that I'm doing this work. And I have a very special guest with me today, someone who's been a client of mine now for a couple of years. And I got involved in her case because I read about her story in the Miami Herald a couple of years ago. And it really spoke to me, it really impressed me. Anna Lazara Rodriguez spent 19 years in a prison in Cuba, in one of Cuba's first women for prison that Fidel Castro set up. Because 60 years ago, she was out there doing the same thing that we're seeing people doing today in Cuba, fighting for freedom, fighting against the Castro regime. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about her story, a little bit about her experiences. I love that she was known as the plantadas, right? Is that what they say it? A planted one, because they couldn't break her. That imagine 19 years of torture and starvation and dehydration and just as much abuse as they could throw at her, but they couldn't break her. And she was always fighting for freedom. And now she's here in the United States and she's settled here and she is in the fight, at 82. Are you 82 years old now, Anna?
Yeah.
So at 82 years old, she's fighting for her house where she lives with another former prisoner who served 18 years in Fidel's prisons, who's dying of Alzheimer's. And unfortunately, we have banks today that rather than do the right thing are trying to throw her out of the house that she's lived in for over a decade. And they're trying to do it with fake evidence and by lying to the courts. And we're trying to stop that. So, without further ado, I just want to welcome Anna. Thank you for joining us on the show, for being our first guest. I really appreciate it. And Anna, please tell us a little bit about what was it like for you when you saw what was happening when Fidel Castro rose to power?
I'm very touched right now because I know how communists work. So it's for us that we're very young people. They treat us as we were animals. I remember in the beatings always were men, the ones that beat us, and they have erection. And it was a double humiliation. And I have been, for example, in one solitary confinement, sleeping in the floor without light, and two menstruation without anything to cover myself, absolutely nothing, and no water, not a single drop of water to clean myself. So when you go to sleep, because the night came, even though you don't have light, in Cuba you have certain amount of light in solitary. But when the night come, you know that the cockroaches are going to come to touch you because you are dirty. And I know that, for example, when you do a hunger strike, they deprive you of the water. And you learn quickly how to deprive yourself of food. But the water is something incredible. I remember on one occasion that in this third day without water, I start hallucinating. And I saw the jar coming, and I tell myself, you are a medical student, so you know that jars don't fly.
Hmm.
So you are hallucinating. And I try to calm myself. Then I close my eyes so I couldn't see the jar. Then I start hearing the winds that the jar have acquired. And my medical mind told me, now, right now, you are schizophrenic because you are having visual and hearing hallucination.
And
Then
that was just from the was that the effects of what years of that kind of torture and
it,
abuse
it,
did? Because I'll tell you, and I've come to know you now for a couple of years, and I've spent time with you, and it is very, very impressive to me to the way you carry yourself. You know, look, we were when Anna's case, when she was up for eviction, when this first started, we had all kinds of politicians who came out to help, and we stopped the eviction. We had Senator Annette Taddeo, Senator Ileana Garcia, a Republican and a Democrat. Those were the first ones that came out. Alex Diaz de la Portilla was actually another very important fighter for us in this cause. And the Miami City Commission, Ken Russell, were they had a whole presentation, a proclamation that honored you for your courage and for your what you endured, and asked the mayor of Miami-Dade County, the Miami Commission actually asked the Miami-Dade mayor of Miami-Dade County, Danielle Levine Cava, to stop evictions based on what's going on with all these fraudulent foreclosures. And I was very thankful that the mayor, Danielle Levine Cava, actually stepped in and stopped your eviction. She was a key person that made it so the sheriff couldn't come out long enough for us to get in front of Judge Peter Lopez, who's the judge in your case now, who stopped the eviction from going forward, and now is giving us a chance next week to present evidence that these banks are committing fraud, they're felonies. So to me, what I keep drawing around to is, I see these images from Cuba today, like this last week. I remember there was like the big, people on the street protesting by the thousands, and then I saw there was an image of they had like bus after bus after bus after bus after bus filled with people who were supporting the Communist Party, who were all getting off the buses with bats and sticks, and it was kind of makes you pause and think about, that's how the government keeps power there, is they just get people to go out and brutalize the other side. One of the paralegals in my office has family in Cuba, and she just told me that her 16 and 18-year-old cousin were disappeared in the middle of the night just last week. The cops came in and took them, and they're looking to see whether or not you have rice in your house or whether you have meat in your house, because those are apparently the only things you can get on the black market. And
they have absolute power. They have all the power of the world. That they can do anything against the people, and the people have no defense. Because the first thing that the government did in Cuba was get all the weapons that people have, all the weapons.
hmm
That was the first measure that Castro took.
hmm thank God for our Second Amendment. And I'll say this, like, to me, as a lawyer, when we're talking about this is constitutional. I think it's interesting that in America, we're fighting about whether you can have, you know, assault rifles or semi-assault rifles or handguns or bows and arrows, whatever it is that everyone's fighting about. But when they talk about the Constitution, when they talk about the Second Amendment, what they're talking about is the ability to fight back against a tyrannical government. Because what happened in Cuba can happen anywhere,
Can happen.
right? It can happen here. Could it happen in the United States? Do you think?
The institutions of the United States protect us, but at the same time, if you corrupt the institution, then you have nothing. That is what we have to preserve, not only the Constitution, but the institutions cannot be corrupt. We have to stop the corruption in the institution, in the FBI, in CIA, in the Department of Justice. We have to stop.
I think that there's I don't know which side of the political aisle people fall on, and I don't really care. Like I think that our country has become intentionally divided. That it's not the first time that the haves have divided the have-nots and put them against each other. And it's as simple as you're red or you're blue or you're liberal or you're conservative or you're woke or not woke, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, the conversation still comes down to, are we following the Constitution? Is our government doing what it's supposed to be doing? Because if everyone loses faith in the government, that's when the opportunity arises for a strong man to come in, like Castro. And that's the danger. And I the reason why I'm doing this show, the reason why I want Anna to be my first guest on the show is because I think she really does encapsulate like what it means to fight for freedom. It's not just wearing a shirt with an American flag on and some snappy slogan that makes it sound like you're smarter than the other half of the country. That's not it. Like, you're caught up in the game. You're caught up in the miscommunication, in the tribalism that's going on in our world today. And Denise, can you put up the preamble of the Constitution? Because this is something that we talk about a lot. I actually am a scout leader for the Boy Scouts, and I teach citizenship in the nation to Boy Scouts for years now. And a lot of that merit badge you have to take if you want to be an Eagle Scout is about the Constitution, and how we got there. And people don't know, they don't remember.
But we have lost domestic insurance.
I mean, when you look at what we're supposed to be doing, the purpose of government is. Can we put that back up? The purpose of government is to, yeah, please for a second, is to establish justice. What does it mean to establish justice? It means that you walk into a courtroom and you settle your disputes under the law in a court, and everyone's bound by the law. Doesn't matter if you're the richest person in the world, you're the poorest person in the world. You have the same rights as everyone to due process, and if you're following the law, you're going to be safe. If you're not following the law, you're going to have problems, right? That's what it means to establish justice. To ensure domestic tranquility, and that's about like making sure people aren't on the street, protesting, in like they are in Cuba today because they have no food, because they're being abused and burdened and oppressed in ways that they're
The blessing of liberty.
I mean, there's when you think about what these guys did, 245 years ago, they were, these guys were living a long time ago, and they really were talking about, like promoting the general welfare. Like, I don't know if you're a socialist or a Democrat or a communist or whatever you want to call it. It is the Constitution says the government is supposed to promote the general welfare. That means you're supposed to help people in the government, and not just that small segment of the population with all the money and power, right? That lives by a different set of laws. That's what these guys who wrote this Constitution fought a war against. That's what everyone we've ever sent to war in the name of our Constitution and our flag. we're supposed to be fighting about that. Everyone should have the right to be free and equal. They should all have inalienable rights. And you lived in Cuba, where that all shifted like kind of overnight, wasn't it? Like when Fidel rose to power.
Yeah, it was. I think it was prepared
Sure. Oh, they've been planning this. I think that there's
because in 1956 I was talking with a friend of mine. The man belonged to the Communist Party, but he didn't knew that I knew that he belonged to the Communist Party. But in a small town, everybody knows everybody. So I knew who he was. But we talk a lot about the literature and this and that. And he starts telling me, he appeared sad. And I said, "What happened to you?" And he says, "Well, I don't want to be a pilot, but I'm going to be a pilot." And I said, "A pilot of what?" "Well, when the revolution triumphed, I'm going to Mexico. I will be there 6 months, studying aviation or so." I said, "Oh, but that is on a small plane. That is for agricultural purpose, this and that." I said, "Yeah, but 6 months later, I will go to Czechoslovakia and I will be trained in jets. I will be there 5 years. I'll return as a commandante and I will teach others what I have learned." And I age at those moments
Yeah.
because I was fighting against Batista. If I continue fighting, I was going to accelerate the coming of communism. But if I didn't fight, I was accepting a dictatorship. So you age at those moments
I mean, I think
because you
you're
have to decide
right.
what to do.
I think that people today, I hope that people wake up. I hope that people wake up and realize that, things are not supposed to be this way. Government's not supposed to be pitting us against each other. Media is not supposed to be pitting us against each other. We're all supposed to be brothers. We're all supposed to be citizens of the same country. We're supposed to be willing to die for each other and to share with each other and to help each other make this world the best place we can. And meanwhile, there's that small segment of the population with all the money and power living by a different set of laws that is doing whatever they can to take advantage for themselves. And I think it's interesting because Anna, as I said when we started the show, isn't just a freedom fighter; she's a client. Anna's been working with me now. I read about her story in the Miami Herald 2 years ago because they were evicting her, or they just finished a foreclosure on her house. And I called her up. I got involved. I looked at it and I said, "Up, this is that Bank of America fraud case." And I've been litigating, fighting with Bank of America and J.P. Morgan Chase and all these. There's very few defenses left in foreclosure, except for there's some very significant frauds happening. And when I saw Anna's case, the first thing I did was I got in and I filed a lawsuit that said that the judgment that they're using to foreclose on her house was fraudulent, that it was based on fake evidence. And just to kind of make it easy and quick, if you know anything about the history of foreclosures, there was a robo-signing scandal 10 years ago. Banks were using fake assignments of mortgages, recording them in the public records, presenting them and saying, here's a document that says the bank wins. And it was all fraud. And the government, the FBI said it was millions of false and fictitious assignments that were, in courtrooms all over the country. And the regulators got involved, the Office of the Controller of the Currency. Oh, and someone's calling. The regulators got involved, and there was a 2011 consent judgment. There was the $25 billion national mortgage settlement. There's serious stuff that happened 10 years ago. and they promised to stop using fake evidence in foreclosures. And guess what? In Anna's case, we have one of those robo-signed assignments attached to her complaint. And then we have another piece of evidence they're using to back that up. It's called an endorsement. When you sign the back of a check, that signature that has legal significance. And Bank America, the evidence shows, forged that endorsement, not just in Anna's case, but in cases all over the country. And this is the work that we fight about. This is what we're doing. And Anna, right now we have a hearing coming up next week where Judge Pierre Lopez is going to let us present all our evidence that there's fraud here. And to me, like what I think people need to understand, because I know Anna did not pay her mortgage, and many people think that means that banks can do whatever they want. They can commit fraud, they can lie, they can commit felonies. It doesn't matter. Anna should have paid her mortgage. And I want to talk a little bit about the mortgage that everyone's so quick to condemn her for not paying. Because I think that when you actually understand what happened to Anna, it happened to a lot of people. This is not just Anna's story. There are millions and millions of people who were caught up in the same predatory practices by Countrywide, Home Loans Inc. Remember those guys from, the run up to the crash, Washington Mutual. Those guys were targeting communities of color. They were targeting the elderly with these loans that they knew they were never going to be able to repay. And I've spoken to Anna about her situation. And Anna, when you first met with the people from Countrywide, and they told you how much your payment was supposed to be before you took out the loan, what'd you tell them?
When you come to this country, you assume that the banks and the organizations are reliable.
Mm-hmm.
So you trust the bank.
It used to be that you couldn't get a loan unless they used to underwrite the loans. They used to actually make sure that they checked that you had income, that you had a stable life, that you qualified and you could repay the loan. Otherwise, you didn't get it. That was how it was for 100 years.
I was working, taking care of a friend of mine that was an ex-political prisoner. That
you lived with, what was her name, Maria?
Yeah, Maria Mier.
So you had Maria, who was a political prisoner with you in Cuba.
Died from cancer.
She died from cancer, and you're still living with.
Miriam Ortega was a political prisoner too.
So we have
two. She has Alzheimer's.
So in this house was you, a 19-year prisoner of Castro, Maria, who was also 3 years in prison with you.
But she has fought a lot, for the political prisoners here.
And she was living in the States.
Ortega, that has Alzheimer's.
And Miriam Ortega is another woman in her 80s who has Alzheimer's right now, is dying of Alzheimer's, that you still care for in this house. Right?
Yeah, living in the house.
So I understand that at the time that you took out this loan, Maria was dying of cancer.
Yeah.
And she couldn't qualify for a loan, and she was desperate. She needed money. Right. And they asked you if you would be willing to sign the mortgage on your house. Now, you were what, in your 70s at that point when you took out this loan?
Yeah, but before Countrywide, we have been paying, the mortgage for years.
Yeah, I mean, you were a normal person, right? You took care of everything you're supposed to do. You were,
and this, the insurance and the taxes, everything.
Right. And then, from what I understand, is that
I don't know what happened to her, but usually the medication.
Well, let me make sure it's clear.
Go to the brain,
Well, let me say this: I think it is a reality that most people refuse to acknowledge. That if you get cancer, it is a very, very high percentage of people who get cancer who go broke, who lose everything. Because we have a medical system that doesn't pay for your treatment. So, until you've lost everything, and then, you still get it's different. if you have cancer in Cuba, of all places, does that happen? Do you go broke from
Well,
treatment? Do you know?
in Cuba, you die, you die right now. Before the revolution, we have very good treatments in the hospital, in the mutual. We have three kinds of insurance in Cuba before the revolution.
Mhm.
You, you pay less than $1 every month, and you are in a mutual kind of a
Fund.
that you have covered everything, absolutely everything. If you don't have the dollar each month, you can go to the hospital. I work in the hospital for a lot because I was a medical student, and you are covered completely. I even have a patient, the only patient that I have in my life was a Chinese. When the doctor told me this is your patient and you decide the treatment, I knew that the man was dying because I have no experience of medicine.
Hmm.
So I began treating the man with kindness. The man get 40 pounds.
Came back.
Last 9 months, have no treatment at all. And the doctors never understood what happened to me, to him. And I said, it's only loss, doctor. The only thing I have give him is kindness and love.
That to me is like, you know, it's such a choice we can make as a society to treat each other with kindness and love. And I think that what happened with Anna's case is she's got a friend, her friend who's living with her who's dying of cancer, another one who's dying of Alzheimer's, and the friend with cancer asks her to get a mortgage from Countrywide, and she tells them, I can't afford this mortgage, I don't make enough money to pay this. And most people don't know this, but Anna was one of the people that this was systemic, this was happening with Countrywide all the time. They just made up Countrywide made up the paperwork that says Anna made enough money to qualify for the loan. Countrywide told her that it was okay to sign that. And when they gave her the loan, the loan was a special negative amortizing loan that the whole product is designed, the loan product is designed so that the person's not going to pay. And instead, when they borrow 100,000 or $500,000, the loan is going to keep increasing in principal balance. So they're going to make a ton more money and then interest on that and attorney's fees and costs and everything on top of that. It's a predatory loan. This is what, there were settlements. They were targeting, people that were, communities of color because it's racial discrimination. Why? They were easy marks, and that is something that that small segment of the population with all the money and power made a lot of money doing that. A lot of money doing that. And now 10 years later, when the loan didn't get repaid because no one was ever going to be able to repay Anna's loan on the money that Anna made. Once her friend Maria died of cancer, there was no, I mean, they tried to pay as much as they could, but once she died, that was it. The loan went into foreclosure. And now that it's in foreclosure, you know, Anna had a lot of people that tried to help her. I mean, you had like 5 or 6 different law firms that all volunteered to step up and try to save you because of who you are and what you went through, right?
I, I really, I really don't know what to do right now. If I, if they do the eviction,
Well, they're not. Let me make sure. You should not worry. They're not going to get this eviction because it's fraud. And it doesn't matter. Like, we live in the United States, the greatest country in the world, because we have a rule of law, because we have a constitution. The Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says no person should be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And a fraudulent foreclosure is not due process. So that's, and I'll say this, Anna, like your case has been, to me, to see all these politicians come together at the state and local level. Unfortunately, we reached out to Senator Marco Rubio, who, was at Versailles last week. And I had a great line, the only country that the Cuban people can't be anything they want to be is in Cuba. It's a good line. But, when you have someone here in the United States that Senator Rubio can help, from the Cuban community who suffered and lived the fight that he's supposed to be, picking up for us, we haven't heard from him. I've spoken to his people. They know what's going on. Same thing with with Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar. They know what's going on. And we've asked for them to help because this is a national problem. It's not just you, Anna. That's what I love about, your courage in all this is that that this fight is for your house, but it's for the millions of people right now who are facing an eviction during the pandemic. Like you're one of them. But there's a lot of people out there who, this week is the last, and this month is the last month of the moratorium, which only helped the people with good credit, stay in their homes. But once that moratorium that they're talking about, the federal moratorium, doesn't help people like you who got mortgages from Countrywide and Washington Mutual, the subprime mortgage people, because, the government, they're not helping you. And that's what this fight is about. It's about kindness and love and about caring for each other as a country, as a society. So where we are now is, Anna had, a long time now where she's been living with this fear over her head, right? It's been, how many years you've been worried about when the sheriff's coming?
Since 2008. I've been fighting with lawyers and more lawyers, and for nothing.
And I think to me, what's interesting is that, the work that I'm doing is just straight legal work.
While I work, I pay a lot to lawyers, and I never saw their faces.
I mean,
you are the lawyer that have seen more in my life, and you are the only one that I haven't paid a dime.
Well, look,
it's incredible.
I think that what we're dealing with today is a miracle in the making, and we're so close. Next week we're going to put up when we put this out, we're going to put up a link to the hearings Wednesday and Thursday of next week, the 24th, the 25th, and the 26th of July. We're having a chance. It's like a little trial where Judge Peter Lopez is letting us present all the evidence. This is fraud. I'm calling Bank of America to stand. I'm going to cross-examine them. I'm going to call their witnesses, their lawyer, to the stand and have them testify about this fraud. I'm going to call. We found a witness who actually worked for Countrywide and did everything that we know now what they actually did, which is totally contrary to what Bank of America has been telling everyone for years under oath that they're doing. And I think this is going to be amazing because it's not just this one judge, Peter Lopez. Like, I've been working in this town for 25 years. I started as a prosecutor and I represent banks and foreclosures, and now I'm prosecuting banks. And it's like time to go to trial with these cases. And, there was a judge, she's the matriarch of the whole fight amongst the judges, Beatrice Butchko. Judge Betty Butchko was a prosecutor 20, how many years ago. She's been on the bench a long time. And she has, every time I've gone into her courtroom and said there's fraud in the court, she's called it out. She started contempt proceedings, criminal contempt proceedings. Judges have a lot of power. You can't go into their courtroom and lie to them. You can't go into their courtroom and ask for people's houses using fake evidence. That is something that a judge can do a lot with if they choose to. And Judge Butchko's been doing that now for years. And every time she does it, the banks run up to the appellate court here in Miami, the third DCA. The third DCA stopped her and then reversed her. Yet just last month, she did it again. We walked in the same exact Bank of New York Mellon, Bank of America foreclosure with the assignment of mortgage that's fake and the endorsement that's a forgery. That same case that we have in front of Judge Lopez next week was, I presented that for another client, this woman named Julie Nicholas. Julie was a nurse, single mom, Haitian American, single mother, raised 3 children in that house, and was paying her mortgage perfectly for years. And then her company got audited for like 3 months. And once they audited the company, for those 3 months, she didn't get paid. And for years, she begged Bank of America. She paid them thousands of dollars in temporary modification payments, filled out application after application, and they never helped her. They just took her house, sold it in foreclosure. And I stepped in just like I'm doing for you. And we had, the judge had a hearing, the same hearing we're going to have next week. We were doing this in front of Judge Butchko. We stopped it because Bank of America, Bank of New York Mellon, Carrington, and their lawyer, the lawyer named Nathaniel Callahan from Ackerman, were all charged. She started criminal contempt proceedings against all of them for fraud on the court, for lying, for perjury. And that is something that they ran up to the appellate court again. The Third District Court of Appeals stopped everything, and I'm offended because the argument that the Bank of America makes is that the lawyer that's representing all these guys, Nathan Callahan, what Mr. Callahan's argument is to the appellate court is that Judge Butchko should be held accountable. Judge Butchko is dishonest, that she's creating she falsely accused them of perjury, of felony, without any evidence, is what they're saying. And worse, that she's doing it not because that's what the evidence shows. They're doing it because Bruce Jacobs, this foreclosure defense lawyer, who's from a small firm that's been fighting these banks in the trenches for years, has some special influence over her. It's a corruption issue, is what they're saying. And you can't do that. You're not allowed to lie to an appellate court, and you certainly can't lie that the judge is corrupt. But that is the fight that Judge Butchko started. And we just had another judge in your case. I was telling you this on the way over. It's Judge Charlie Johnson, the one who actually said that you can be evicted, the one who issued the order that says you can be evicted. They went back in front of him just this week, and because Judge Johnson's dealing with the fraud, with the foreclosure, and Judge Lopez is dealing with the lawsuit to vacate the judgment due to fraud. So they went into Judge Johnson and asked him to enter an order that enforces your consent judgment. You agreed to the judgment, and I shouldn't be allowed to present the evidence of fraud, I guess is what they were going for. And the judge stopped the hearing and said, I agree with you, Mr. Jacobs. Like, what they're saying, they're not telling me the law. They're not telling me the fact. At least it appears that that's what just happened. And ordered them, explain to me why you didn't lack candor, why you weren't dishonest with the court. That happened. I got the order today that says that they have to respond. And to me, that is just more of this effort of catching these guys committing fraud. I mean, we just did in yet another case, because all these cases are connected. They're all the same fraud, but happening in front of all these different judges. And, one judge ordered them to come in and give documents and testify. And we just had a deposition yesterday. Bank of America admitted that they destroyed records that were subpoenaed, and then they were given a chance to provide the data that was in those records. And now we know they've admitted that they didn't give us all the data. So some of that data was definitely destroyed in violation of subpoena, and they doctored what they gave us. It was not legit. And that is all what we're presenting and asking the court to stop
what Bank of America did when I have the the mortgage, they put the Maria Mier name in the contract, and she have never signed that. So they impose her signature that electronically or whatever.
I mean, there's so much. Look, at the end of the day, what I think people need to pause and consider is 10 years ago when they imploded the economy, right? Everybody lost their jobs, lost their life savings, right? Bank America and JP Morgan Chase had about $3 trillion in assets. And they were too big to fail, too big to jail. We were going to break them up or not break them up. We were going to do the Dodd-Frank Act. We were going to do the CFPB. We do other things to rein them in, whatever it was supposed to be. But what happened was that they didn't do any of that. What happened was that these banks just kept committing fraud, kept making money. Nobody went to prison. Nobody was held accountable. All the regulators, it's like a revolving door. You'd work for the government, then you'd go work for the bank, or you work for their law firm, you can work for the government. And we're watching as the institutions are being corrupted. And meanwhile, now today, Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase have $6 trillion in assets. And they are walking into court. And do you know what their defense is to your case? Do you know what they've filed in court as their actual defense to all of this fraud? Privilege. They claim, swear to you, this is what their argument is, that because they're doing this in court, it's privileged, which is shocking to me. I don't have a privilege to commit fraud on the court. I'm not privileged to forge signatures and lie about it or defy court orders or destroy evidence. I'm not privileged. Are you privileged to do any of that? What do you think would happen to you if you were in a lawsuit and you turned out to be committing forgeries and lying to the court, and what would you think you'd still have a chance to win your case? No.
No.
Right? And the thing that I love about your fight, Anna, is it brings the truth right in front of your face. What are you going to do? You're either going to protect the constitutional rights of Anna, and that means everyone else, or you're going to evict her during a pandemic based on this foreclosure because they have a privilege. And I just find it so offensive to think that they would even dare say they have a privilege. It's just legalese. It's nonsense. It's just saying well, no one's, prosecuted us yet, so we must be privileged. So why don't you just say it and we'll call it a day? But what they're doing violates Florida Supreme Court law. It violates the Constitution. It violates the 2011 National Office of the Control of the Currency consent order. Violates the National Mortgage Settlement. Imagine that you are convicted and you pay, you're part of a $25 billion settlement that is the largest settlement in the history of the United States for systemic fraud, and all of a sudden you get caught doing it again. Something needs to be done here, and I just want to tell you it's really been an honor to represent you in your case. I've been doing this work a long time, and your case is perfect. It is the perfect case to expose there's no place left for them to turn except for they have a privilege.
Because what is important is that people have to understand that with the truth and with the fight for a better world, you create a better world.
Amen. Amen. I mean, look, we're going to be doing the show. Right now, what I ask is that if you are able to, please sign. I'm going to put the Zoom information. Please come support us at the hearing that we're going to have Wednesday and Thursday of next week, the 24th. I think it's the 25th and the 26th. You just sign on. It'll be you can be there. Please share, and comment on this. We're trying to start a conversation because I think it's important that people recognize that our institutions are still under attack. And they're taking a beating. People's faith in government and once we lose that, then you open up the door for someone else to say, only I can fix it. And that's when you end up with dictators and communists. And that's how the small segment of the population with all the money and power gets to live by a different set of laws. And I swore the oath. And I know that what we're doing is constitutional. And we're going to fight for that, just like everyone else who's ever laid their life down. And Anna, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show, and for being willing to have this fight. I'm so proud of you.
And I'm proud to have found you in my life. Believe me. Believe me. You are the a human being that made me believe in justice again.
I'll say this: it's contagious. I believe in justice. I've watched you sitting in front of the Miami Commission. The words that you spoke are just powerful. Like to know someone who lived in a world where there was no justice, in a world where there was a corrupt government. And we throw around Facebook memes about all the nonsense that we're all seeing today in government. And that's not what we're talking about. When you're talking about the government can rip you out of your house in the middle of the night and put you in prison for 19 years, starve you, beat you, humiliate you, all because you want to be free. That's what the fight's about. And we all got to recognize that. We all got to work together, come together, because this is what it means to swear an oath to the Constitution. This is constitutional. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone, and we're going to do the show next week as well. So please, help us share the information, make this go viral, and we'll talk to you all soon. Oh, if you want, you can get Anna's book, is Diary of a Survivor, 19 years in a Cuban woman's prison. So please, go on Amazon. You could buy the book, hear her story in more detail. We're going to have the Zoom link out for you for the hearing that's coming up next week. And if you need any more information, you go to Jake Legal, JAKELEGAL.com is my website. And we have a whole page dedicated to Anna's case. And we look forward to getting justice for you and everyone else, Anna. So thank you very much for being on our show.
Thank you.
Okay. Good.